of others, or strikes out against injustice, they send forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and injustice. Those words were spoken in 1966 at Cape Town University by Senator Robert Francis Kennedy. They are inscribed on his memorial at Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, and they have been the most powerful source of inspiration for my generation ever since. The more the world changes, the more it seems to remain the same, I believe, because the three most important needs of every human being on earth are not always food, clothing, and shelter, as much as the need for justice, healing, and love. Without the latter, the former are useless. It is the gross inequality of food, clothing, and shelter that divides us, and the absolute necessity for justice, healing, and love that can unite us. Clearly, we need a far more realistic understanding of who we are and where we're going. Consider the following, if you will, please, called Earth as a Village, from Philip M. Pastor, School of Medicine at Stanford University. If we could shrink the Earth's population of over 7 billion people down to a single village consisting of 100 people, with all the existing ratios the same, it would look something like this. There would be 60 Asians, 12 Europeans, 13 Africans, and 15 people from the Western Hemisphere. There would be 52 men and 48 women. There would be 79 non-whites and 21 whites. There would be 67 non-Christians and 33 Christians. There would be no doctor, no nurse, no dentist, no hospital or clinic, and no school. There would be no safe drinking water. There would be no common language. There would be no electricity and no paved roads. There would be 70 people unable to read or write. There would be 50 people suffering from malnutrition. There would be one person in the village near death and one person near birth. The entire food supply for the village would depend entirely on outside sources. Yet 6 people in that village would possess 59% of the entire world's wealth, and all 6 would be U.S. citizens. There would be one college graduate, one computer, one TV, and the average person in that village would be a 13-year-old Chinese girl. Whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, we are all responsible for each other and the world, which is exactly the way it is, because consciously or unconsciously, we have made it so. And we are all unable to account for the rules that govern the universe. In other words, we are not responsible for such rules, but we are responsible for all the rules that govern our own hearts and minds. And we are all beneficiaries of those countless heroic strangers who have gone before us over the centuries and assure us that the world is still a wonderful and safe place, despite our fears, and that we're not asked to do great things. We are asked to do all things with genuine care. Of course, such an ideal is rare in a culture of so many compromised values and so much cynicism, a culture that all too often knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. And yet there remains a very real and mysterious yearning deep within every human heart that compels us to reach outside of ourselves to serve others for our own sake. This yearning is a manifestation, I believe, of our true selves and leads us to the very first small, conscious acts of personal heroism, which brings rejection from the crowd and satisfaction from the heart. But mind you, this yearning can be very costly as well. If it were not so, we'd be left to question its value. But this above all, one heart with courage is a majority. Over the entire history of the human race, every truth began as a blasphemy. And no one has ever made a contribution of any real worth without self-sacrifice, personal suffering, and sometimes even death. The Irish tell a story of a man who arrives at the gates of heaven and asks to be let in. St.Peter says, "Of course, just show us your scars." The man says, "I have no scars." St. Peter says, "What a pity. Was there nothing worth fighting for? My fondest wish for each and every one of you young people here this morning is that you will find something in your life worth fighting for, because when you do, you will have found a way to unite the will of the Spirit to the work of the flesh. And then you will be able to help each other, lift each other up, and strive for that place where the heart is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depths of truth and tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sands of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action into that heaven of freedom, my Father. Let us all awake. Thank you.